Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
Hello, RailCats fans, and welcome back to another edition of the RailCats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Savedich, and a bit of a quiet week. And if you haven't noticed, now that I'm noticing it, I have glasses on. I've been wearing glasses for about a month. I just haven't worn them because of the glare from the lighting. So I'll try to keep the glare away from it if you're really focused on it. Most people probably aren't. Anyways, that's beside the point. So yeah, I'm wearing glasses. Other than that, it's been a slow week. Not until the Friday did we get a signing. So it was kind of nice because of the way my work schedule was this week. I was actually supposed to work all days this week, but my store manager was like, hey, well, actually, my bad. I was supposed to close Friday no matter what. But the lady that I'm replacing, or well, not replacing, just filling in for, I should say, she's getting close to her due date, so we just had to have extra coverage, so I was that extra coverage. So I kind of had a crazy week. I was only supposed to close one day, and I ended up closing 3 days, so it was kind of nice that I didn't have to necessarily worry about a lot of signings, because I was coming home and eating and then going to bed, and it was just a really weird situation on that front. So I was glad that we only had one signing, and I was able to write it on Friday night, and then, or actually I didn't write it on Friday. I wrote it on Saturday morning and was able to post it that on Saturday morning. So, and this was an interesting signing. I know when we look at the numbers, when we go through the numbers, Carlos Sanbrea. This is something that I think a lot of us RailCats fans have been kind of hoping for necessarily. And, you know, I know that his 2 games in the majors really wasn't anything spectacular. Played against the Diamondbacks and the A's, and then his debut, he had 1 inning. He gave up 2 runs on 2 hits. 1 was a home run. He walked 2, struck out 1. You know, and then he pitched against the A's, where he pitched 1 inning and gave up 1 hit, 1 walk, and 1 strikeout. So, like, the 2 games that he really played, do you really get the best of both worlds in that situation? Probably not. And then I know if the name kind of sounds familiar, it may not if you really don't pay attention. I guess it didn't really sound familiar to me either. But he did play with Kansas City last year. He only played a handful of games. With Kansas City, he played 5 games, and his ERA was 13.5, and we already seen him play. If you've watched every RailCats games, he did play against the RailCats. I believe it was the second series. I think it was the May 14th, where he gave up quite a bit of runs to the RailCats. He pitched 1 inning, and he gave up 3 hits on 3 runs on 3 hits. He only played 5 games last year. They were all relief appearances. He had, I think, 5.1 innings pitched, gave up 6 hits, 8 runs, all earned, 2 home runs, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. So, I mean, when you look at those numbers, like, it's kind of like, ooh, those are kind of rough numbers. And you know, do you really? I think it's one of those, like, Kansas City, playing with Kansas City, he had probably a shorter leash. You know, and I know Kansas City kind of stumbled a little bit out of the gate last year, but, you know, they ended up winning the Miles Wolf Cup. Go figure, right? I think with that having such a short leash, and then I know in the article I didn't write what happened, so I know I'm kind of like jumping all over the place, but it all makes sense when I wrap it all together. So looking through his career, you know, he was a free agent an international free agent signing to the Houston Astros. He's from Venezuela. He started in the Dominican Summer League, which is like a minors affiliate to the Astros. Goes to the Astros organization. 6 years through there. August 1st, 2022, he makes the 40-man roster. He gets promoted to the major leagues, where he plays the 2 games. After that, they go to send him down, basically, on October 30th. The Royals pick him up off of waivers, and then On December 1st, he was designated for assignment by Kansas City. The following day, Kansas City did a non-tender on Carlos, making him a free agent. He did not, and then he ended up re-signing with the organization, playing a handful of seasons down there, and then he became a free agent the following season. So in February of 2022, he signs a minor league contract with Detroit, but he didn't play any games in 2022. He missed the year due to rib injuries and personal matters. So then he was released on March 3rd in 2023. So that's why there's a gap between basically the 21 season and 2022 season. He had some injuries, which then, when you start to think about that, his first time back is in Kansas City, and thinking, you're playing Kansas City, or you're playing with Kansas City, so obviously you're going to have some talent to you, but you haven't been pitching in a handful of years. So it's like, it's one of those where it was probably a really good signing at the time, but he just probably never got back into the groove of things. So it was just kind of hard to kind of get that one. And I'm not saying that he wasn't pitching somewhere else, but there's no stats along the line that show where he could have been. I don't see anything on any other sites where he could have potentially been playing, or whatever the case may be. So it's just one of those situations where I think what Lamar Rogers is getting at is this is a guy that's going to be a veteran. He's already marked as a veteran. He's played in the MLB. He's played through the Astros organization. Playing through the Astros organization, that just, it really seems like he picks the guys from Houston. He picks the guys from Dodgers, in those kinds of organizations. It kind of seen quite a bit of Kansas City and Detroit in there as well. So I think that's just kind of where he's planted his roots, and the people that he might know are in that areas. So, and especially in Houston, obviously with Rogers going through the ranks of Houston, that would make sense in that department. But with Carlos, I really think, what I'm going to take out of really what the bulk of his time in the minors, he boasted a 3.82 ERA. He played in 181 games. He only started in 30 of those. He ends up having 21 saves, just over 400 innings pitched. His whip's a 1.33. His hits per nine are 7.7. Home runs per nine is 0.5. Walks 4.3. Strikeouts 8.9. I just think this is a guy that is going to have a longer leash with the RailCats, and is going to be able to make a little bit more mistakes and be a veteran bullpen presence, and a guy, like I said, the big appeal to him is he's been in the major leagues. I don't know, someone's going to be able to tell me when the last time the RailCats signed a player that has MLB experience, because I know in the last 2 years, I would say even 3 years, they really haven't had that. So, and I know Taggart's deal really wasn't much of that. I mean, his style was more, obviously it worked in the years that he reigned over the RailCats, but I think that was a little bit of the way the Pioneer League worked a little bit, was once the players hit a certain age, they couldn't really be in the Pioneer League anymore, so they were a step down from the American Association. So a lot of players were feeding into the American Association. So I think that's where a lot of players necessarily were founded, from Taggart, was in those Pioneer Leagues, those kind of players that he's able to pull from on that aspect. So I don't really know the last time they signed a major league player, and I think this is just something to put into perspective of, you keep hearing that no one wants to go to Gary, that Lamar Rogers probably makes more money than most of what other teams are giving out, just because it's Gary. And I know Gary keeps getting a bad rep because no one wants to play there. It's not in the greatest of areas, or whatever the case may be, but it's not for a lack of trying. I mean, really, you're bringing in players that are returning that have talent. If they had talent and they didn't want to play there, they don't have to play there, right? They don't have to play there. They don't, I guarantee you someone else would pick them up. they'll go somewhere else. They'll play in the Atlantic League. They'll play in the front, or another team will pick them up. I think there's a lot of players that are on this team that could go play elsewhere and be perfectly fine playing elsewhere as well. I just think that this is a missing piece. Carlos is maybe a missing piece of, you know what, we're really trying to change what we got here. Like I said in last podcast, I really think that the culture has kind of shifted away from players necessarily that have been that play in the stateside, and that's not and the players that are playing stateside, it's not a lot of, like, I should say, a lot of pitchers necessarily kind of are in that kind of range a little bit. But I mean, most of the time that you see most of these players, I can count a handful of players that are from the United States. Most of them are from, Venezuela or Colombia, PR, Dominican Republic, like that kind of stuff, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just think that you're getting baseball players and not, I don't want to say it that way either. I guess I'm going to probably get myself into a pickle here, and I don't want to get myself into a pickle. So this is going to be interesting to talk my way out of this one. I think what you see is, like I said it last week on Instagram, or on Instagram. I didn't say anything on Instagram, but on the podcast talking about Instagram, was like Valera is always posting videos of him batting. Del Valle's posting up photos of him playing winter ball. Mariaga is posting up videos of him playing winter ball. You're just seeing like all these players are going live, and I don't have a lot of the players like on Instagram yet, just because I'm, once the RailCats post where they get, Instagram is, that's when it kind of all starts to pop up. I mean, I guess I can go around and try to find them, but my time schedule really doesn't account for that. What I guess I'm getting at is, like, there's a lot of these players that, like, baseball is their life, basically. Like, if that's their only thing that they know, and that's the only thing they're going to want to do is play baseball. And I think when you get players that play in the United States, they eventually hit a point to where they don't make it affiliate ranks, or they know they're not going to really make it much further, that they just kind of have to stop their career and go into work and not be in, I don't want to say real life, because you can make baseball real life, so I don't want to say that you can make that a full-time job, so I'm not going to say it that way. I'm going to say more of you're going into the workforce, basically, so you have to give up on the dream of being a baseball player. So I think that reality hits players more when they're in the United States, and also a lot of times players have to have jobs in between the season, so they don't have the time or the preparation like maybe some players that are overseas get to do, or international players get to do, just because that's just what they want to do, so I don't think it's necessarily, I think you need a nice mixture of both, because if you just have a team full of players that just do nothing but baseball, and the season may not be going the best way, it's kind of hard to change the ship a little bit. If you go halfway through the season and you're still in the playoff race, but you're not necessarily there, or whatever the case may be, like, it's kind of hard to correct the ship with the team full of players that know, what, this season's kind of a bit of a bust. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to worry about my winter ball league, or whatever the case may be. Like, I can go worry about something else, as versus players that are in the United States, once their season's over, they have to go back to work. So, like, they don't want that portion to be over with. They don't want to go back to their jobs. They want to keep playing baseball. They want to keep proving themselves, or whatever the case may be. So I think you still need a nice mixture. I mean, you need a nice mixture of, seriousness, but relaxing a little bit. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing is the teetering between the two. I think, we're starting to see really a full flip of the roster. You're really seeing what Lamar Rogers wants. Obviously, he's wanting players with good attitudes. He wants players with drive. He wants players with, I want to say personality, a little bit of personality. I know, like, LG Castillo, he's a big personality person. Jackson Valera is a big personality. Del Valle is a big personality. They're just, they put themselves out there, and there's nothing wrong. I think you need a nice mixture of that. And I just think it's the drive, the will to want to win, and I think that's what we're gonna get with this team is that drive, that will, and I just hope the pieces are put together. I really like this. I don't really see a lot of holes. I think Lamar Rogers has done a good job of like, this player's strong suits here, but I need someone to kind of replace him there. I think we're at like 21 people on a roster right now, and I think it's 23 if I'm not mistaken for like the regular season, but you can go up to 30. So I'm gonna view that there's gonna be quite a bit more. I really think there's gonna be quite a bit of pitching that's going to be brought on. But yet again, like I said in the last podcast, it could just be, bring a couple more people on and then kind of go from there because, your spring training, quote unquote, isn't necessarily, now I'm refocused on what I was talking about. I had a brain fart. I seriously forgot what I was talking about. I think what we're getting is you're playing the game between, do you sign a bunch of players and then release a bunch of players, or do you sign a few more, kind of get a basis and have just a little bit of competition for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and go from there? I really think that, maybe another catcher would be nice, another infielder, another outfielder, and then fill the rest of the roster up with pitchers. I really think that's what you're going to need. You need pitchers. I just think that the way Lamar Rogers runs his team, the pitching staff is going to need to be there just because the amount of, not so much starters, but like what you're going to use with the bullpen. I think you still need quite a bit of people that can play that starting and that relief role. I think you need to sign a couple more starters. I really just like true starters. Maybe sign a couple relievers that want to be starters and kind of work them in the rotation. I think you got like the top 2-3 positions kind of locked down. If you want to go a full 5, we can try a full 5. But right now, I think where we're at on the pitching side, I think maybe just a handful more pitchers should be fine. But really outside of that, I don't really see much more going on, unless you're going to bring back a couple players that, weren't signed, that are still not signed from last year, like, Harrison Francis, he was up there in strikeouts and that kind of stuff. I'm not sure exactly what's his next steps are, but like it's just those kind of things that we're seeing from, and I'm just intrigued to see what the rest of the year or how the rest of this is going to wrap up and how weird it's going to be, because I mean, like I said, most of the really from last year, you have 3 pitchers from last year right now. Most of the infield except Mikey Perez is from last year. I know like Marcos Gonzalez and Sierra are newer. The outfield, you got Carlos Machado and then Carlos Rincon. Like those players are new. You're kind of seeing like a kind of almost like a turnover in the pitching staff and quite a bit in the field. But I think the areas that the team was necessarily lacking in are the places that are kind of getting filled. Catching was kind of a crapshoot last year. I'm not, Cadell came in and he came out strong. His batting really wasn't necessarily there. He had some power. The fielding kind of dropped off, but then you go to Thomas Greeley, who was a really good fielder. He was dependable most nights that he was able to hit, but he didn't really hit for a lot of power. So like you're just trying to find that in between. I think the Guillermo Quintana guy, I really think that's gonna be a really good one on that portion of it. There's gonna be a battle between him and Anders Noriega. That those two gonna battle it out. There'll be a good switch off and switch on. I really don't think you're gonna see too much of a difference like double headers between the two as far as like what you're expecting. They're both defensively sound. I think it was Noriega is not really that big in the power, but I think that's starting to kind of come Quintana did a really good job with Cleveland last year. I think the catching area has kind of figured itself out. Infielder seems going to be a little bit stronger. Um, I know you're. It's hard to replace a Lingua, Woodworth, and a Diaz. I know that's going to be really hard, but I just think that maybe defensively will be a tad bit better in the fielding aspect of it, especially at short. I know people may gawk at that and frown and boo me on that one, but if you just look at the numbers of what Lingua did over, when he was first with the RailCats, his numbers kind of kept declining in the aspect of errors, or not improving, but like getting worse. Um, so and Woodworth, I just think that we had a bit of the issue inside the locker room. I think that stuff's all getting weeded out. So I necessarily don't want people to look at the roster and go, well, why are we signing all these players from international? I just think this is the kind of mindset that Lamar Rogers is going for, is the players that necessarily aren't always there's no one on this team except a select few that I would say they're untouchables, basically. There's just no one on this team outside of a select few that I would really say that aren't really going to go anywhere. I mean, really, those players are Castillo, Mariaga. Those two really, to me, are the top two that I would say is that they're probably not untouchables, as far as like their leashes are a little bit longer, as far as if they're going through a cold spell, they can find themselves again. I think Del Valle can be one of those players. It's just going to be interesting to see what Carlos Machado and Carlos Rincon bring to the table. I think that's going to be a competition there. I really think you're going to see a competition probably at third with Jose Contreras and Gonzalez. I think Mikey Perez and Sierra kind of have second and short lockdown. Valera will be, your third or first baseman. So I think that part of it's locked down. So it's just going to be interesting to see where we're going in this realm of things on that portion of it. So yeah, I want to know what you guys think. Or do you guys think, or what kind of players do you think we're missing? What is it that's going to put us at that next step? What is something that we're missing, or what position would you like to see them try? To just fill another spot there. I really think pitching is what they're going to load up on pitching. I think one more in each of the respective fielding positions, but the pitching, just load up as much as you can and see what you get out of it. See who you like. See who's going to give you control, who's going to give you consistency. I think that's the number one thing that's the hardest thing to find in independent baseball is consistency. The players that are most consistent that you can rely on are the players that you need to keep in rotation in the roster. The players that are inconsistent, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, gets really cold, gets really hot. There's no like lukewarm medium of this is what you get day in and day out. Not saying, Jesus Mariaga is probably the most consistent player that we had last year, and he went through colds. But actually, I should take that back. Gio Diaz was basically our most consistent player all year. But like there was spells where he didn't get on base, or he didn't get a hit, or you didn't steal a bag, or he made a bad play at second. Like there's always going to be those mistakes. So like we can't just hone on those. It's the constant ebb and flows of the ups and downs, which ways it's scaling. And I really think this year, if they don't get out to a very good start, they kind of stutter out of the gate, I would start to turn the heat up a little bit on Lamar Rogers' seat a little bit, just because last year was your first full year. You brought most players back that you had the year prior. this is like you've basically turned the roster almost completely over. There's not a lot of people. There's only one player from Lamar Rogers' first year, like first full season. I just want to double check to make sure. Yeah, first full season, because no one else has. You only have one player. So like the Greg Taggart era, once Jesus Mariota leaves, it's like that era is done. It's officially over with. Like no more of him is a part of it anymore. So this is just one of those situations where you have now completely flipped the roster. You have one player that has been with you for 3 years. So this is where it kind of, if you start to stutter a little bit, expect some changes to come, and it just depends on where those if the pitching's not standing up to its standard, expect something to be changing. I know that catchers and pitchers are reporting the camp. MLB starting off. There's going to be some releases going on, so I think we're to the point to where things are going to kind of slow down, and then at that point, once spring training starts and towards the end of spring training, when the regular season starts, that's when I think we're going to start plucking a little bit more at a time to see what we might potentially have come our way. So it'll be interesting. So looking at this week, my schedule is pretty normal-ish. I think I don't work on Wednesday, so maybe I'll try something set up Wednesday. It'll just all depend on what happens. If we sign a bunch of players, like anything that I have in my mind is just going to go out the gate. So I don't really have anything necessarily planned for if there's no signings. If there's no signings, I'll probably think of something along the lines of that. So yeah, just follow me. Follow me. Go to the website RailCatsTalk.com. I'll post stuff up there. I'm still trying to work out the podcast thing. I've been lazy. Okay, I'll just admit it. I've been lazy, and I haven't really done anything. I just come home and like, all right, the hockey's on. I'm gonna turn that on. So I'm guilty of that. I apologize, but I'm only human, so I'm sorry. That's all I got. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your evening, whenever you're watching this. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the social media platforms, Spotify, obviously the website. All that stuff is going to be down in the description below and the links. And I finally figured out on Spotify that I had to hit the link button. It's not like YouTube where I can just post the links and it does. I have to hit it, and then it does it for me. So that's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your evening, and go Cats.
The 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike three. Wrap this one up in green and